Has the flood occurred? If one reads the biblical text materially, one sees that a deluge would have occurred, because men were perverted on the earth. A man would have been warned and his family would have built a boat. And when the flood came, the waters were so high that they covered the highest mountains of the earth. From this story the ancient men said that the presence of fossils of shells on the top of the mountains explain the deluge. In the 20th century the opposite, when we discovered the continental drift and we realized that these fossils were due to ancient seas that had been raised over millions of years by continents that had near, it was shown that the deluge was impossible, because there was not enough water on the earth to cover, for example, Alps. So what does the Catholic Church say about it? Do they claim that the deluge took place? Well, the Church answers, the physical existence of the deluge concerns science. To the science of seeking what concerns the Church is the doctrine of salvation present in the deluge, that only those who are mounted on the boat of God, those there will have the right to salutes, and men of all nations, all peoples. You save, Lord, man and animals. Does that mean that the deluge is only symbolic? No, attention. We must not go so far, and we must look at what science says. 4 research points indicate that something apparently happened in Iraq, where the deluge is described. 1st or 2nd century by digging in the ancient cities and the state, which are ancient lives of ruins. And from that time on the way out of very deep trenches it was found that there was indeed an ancient Neolithic civilization, so a city covered by sediments of often marine origin, and above the more recent cities that had been built.so there have been very old disasters in this very flat country and Iraq. 2nd step, reading the libraries kept in the disappeared cities. Libraries written on plates of clay burned fire, we discovered a text of the deluge which tells it, but in a much more realistic way than the Bible, which seems to enlarge it, and who says this: a flood came, and the earth was covered with a roof like mud, and there was no life on the earth, while the man who had been warned by the gods, multiple, this man ended up letting go of a swallow to see if the water had dropped on the ground. And she came back, so he dropped a raven. One realizes that in fact the Babylonian text is the model that was used to write the biblical text. Thirdly, looking further, it was found that there was probably a tsunami from the Persian Gulf, which had covered the area during the Neolithic. Finally, 5th sign, at the foot of the Ararat Mountains, we actually find marine stones. So some people told me, we even spotted a boat shape. It happened in the years 1945 with the aerial photographs. Since that time, on this form of boat a lot of research has been done, and it seems that it is right, I would say, an optical effect, due to the relief of the mountain. So in the current state of research, something happened in Mesopotamia. A deluge that destroyed part of the civilization of that time. And probably because men were traumatized by this and they did not know that the land was so huge, they enormously developed this text, give them a global value, going so far as to say that it had covered the highest mountains. In fact, one understands the terror that makes writing such a thing, just as we Europeans attacked by the Vikings, we could say that it was the wildest people that had ever existed on earth. So pay attention to those they say, this story is only a legend, it has no real foundation, and those who say, this story is real in the material sense. There were waters that covered the Alps. It is between the two because these biblical texts are written by true human writers with their emotions, and God has given it an infallible deep meaning regarding salvation.